They erased me for 12 years, but when I became rich, they came crawling back. They erased me for 12 years, but when I became rich, they came crawling back. They erased me for 12 years, but when I became rich, they came crawling back. I wasn't expecting ghosts, but that's exactly what the tide dragged to my door. Two familiar faces wearing polite smiles like poorly ironed disguises. The front door of my new beach house, oyster white pillars, sea glass shutters, a view that made therapists unemployed, swung wide as I set down a bag of ripe peaches. On my threshold stood my daughter, Clara, and her husband, Brian, blinking at the Italian leather and the 70-inch monolith of a television as if wealth had its own gravitational pull. "Mom," Clara breathed, voice trembling. We need to talk." 12 years. That number slid through me like cold steel. 12 Christmases, 12 birthdays, 12 quiet New Year's toasts with a cupcake and a candle I lit for myself. I learned to smile at strangers buying my pies at the farmer's market, pecan with a righteous crunch, coconut that browned like a Carolina sunset, because strangers, at least, paid and said thank you. Now here they were, tracking in the scent of desperation and road dust. I stepped aside. "Come in." My tone was calm, the kind of calm you get after drowning once and deciding never again. Clara's dress had seen brighter days. Brian's shirt looked like it had fought a war with a car seat. Their eyes couldn't stop counting, marble veining, art on the walls, the way the ocean unfurled behind me like a living painting of second chances. "Annabelle," Brian caught himself. "Margaret, we know it's been a few years." 12, I said, arranging the peaches in a bowl like a quiet sermon. "Not a few. 12 exactly." Clara's eyes shone. "But tears have currencies, and I'd spent mine already." I remembered when she was 5. Jack-o'-lantern smile, calling me the best cook in the whole world. Somewhere between then and Brian's opinions, my love for her got rebranded as interference. We sat. I chose my favorite chair, the one that faced the windows and the horizon that never lied. They took the cream-colored sofa like defendants choosing the comfortable confession. Brian cleared his throat the way cowards do before they ask for mercy. "We've had setbacks. The construction company went under. Savings wiped out. The house, well, the bank has better plans for it. We're with my parents now. It's tight." Clara's hands worried each other. "The kids keep asking why we don't have our own rooms anymore. Why Dad's mad. Why Mom cries." The word kids scraped something inside me. The grandchildren I'd never held, never kissed, never spoiled with illicit sugar and bad advice. I'd bought toys over the years and tucked them into a box like prayers. I'd told myself someday has sharp teeth. Brian leaned forward. "You have this beautiful place. You're doing so well. We hoped, maybe we could talk about helping. A bridge. Just until we're steady." There it was, laid on the coffee table like an invoice. I took a measured breath, tasted salt and memory. "You didn't need a bridge for 12 years. Brian, you needed a wall. You built one. You kept my daughter on your side of it." Clara flinched. "Mom, please, I was wrong. I see that now. Do you?" I tipped my head. "Or do you see foreclosure?" Silence fell, heavy, honest. Outside, a gull shrieked like a referee with a whistle. I folded my hands. "Tell me the truth, all of it, about why you erased me. Then we'll discuss what you're really asking." Brian's jaw set, calculating. Brian's mask slipped for the first time, and the next words out of his mouth would decide whether this was a reunion or a reckoning. Brian's jaw worked like a machine low on oil, stiff and grinding. His polished manners flickered, the mask he'd worn for 12 years sagging in the heat of truth. "You want honesty?" he said finally. Voice clipped. "Fine. I thought you were too much. Too involved. Too opinionated. Every time Clara and I made a decision, there you were, whispering alternatives. She listened to you more than me. And his throat bobbed, I couldn't compete with that." Clara gasped softly, turning to him as if she'd just learned her husband's voice was capable of confessing treason. "Brian." I leaned back, savoring the bitter clarity. "So it wasn't about me meddling. It was about you being insecure." His eyes flashed, but he didn't deny it. That was as close to truth as a man like Brian would ever crawl. Clara's face crumpled. her hands clasped as though she could hold her regret like water. Mom, I should have fought harder. I let him decide what our family looked like. And that family didn't include you. I was weak. I let her words hang. Weak. The daughter who once clutched my leg in grocery store lines, declaring me her hero, had grown into a woman who bartered her mother for marital peace. Do you know what hurt most? My voice cut through the heavy air. It wasn't the missed birthdays or empty holidays. It was realizing my love was conditional to you. That you only wanted me when I was useful. Clara sobbed, shoulders shaking. For a moment, I glimpsed that gap-toothed child. The one who thought my pies could cure everything. But 12 years is a long time to bury a mother. Brian straightened, his calculation returning. Look, Margaret, we're here now. We're asking for forgiveness. For help. Doesn't that count for something? I studied him the way you study a snake, aware it can strike even when still. Forgiveness doesn't come stapled to a check. Brian, it doesn't come with conditions or deadlines. Silence pressed down until even the waves outside seemed to hold their breath. And then Clara whispered, voice raw, what do we have to do to earn back your love? I rose slowly, walked to the mantel, and lifted an old photograph of Clara at 5 years old, grinning. Toothless, clinging to me like I was the whole world. Holding it up, I asked, tell me, Clara, what happened to this little girl? Clara's gaze locked on the photo in my hand. Her face blanched, as if the smiling child staring back at her was a ghost she had buried deep. Her lips parted, trembling. That little girl, she whispered. She grew up and made choices she thought would protect her marriage. But she lost her compass. She lost you. The confession rang hollow, not because it wasn't true, but because it arrived a decade too late. My thumb brushed over the glass. The outline of Clara's tiny arms wrapped around my legs in a world where love had no conditions. You didn't lose me, I said evenly. You discarded me. Brian shifted forward, his patience thinning like cheap cloth. Margaret, dragging the past around won't solve anything. We're family. Families move on. We need to focus on solutions, not old wounds. I turned, lowering the photo gently back onto the mantel. Families don't amputate their own and call it moving on. Families don't erase grandmothers from birthdays, or leave mothers blowing out candles alone. Families don't show up with empty wallets and call that reconciliation. Clara's sobs filled the room. But I didn't rush to comfort her. My tears had been spent years ago, alone in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled of cinnamon and disappointment. I walked back to my chair, letting the leather sigh beneath me. So tell me, Brian, I said coolly, was it worth it? Was controlling my daughter worth cutting me out like cancer? Did your fragile pride buy you the paradise you wanted? He opened his mouth, then shut it, jaw clenching hard enough to crack a tooth. Clara turned on him suddenly, fury laced with heartbreak. Answer her, Brian, was it worth it? His silence was louder than any confession. Clara's tears slowed, her eyes narrowing on her husband with something new, recognition. For the first time, she seemed to see the man who had stolen 12 years from both of us. And in that crack of silence, I knew the tide inside this house was about to turn. Clara's breathing grew ragged, her sobs shifting into sharp, uneven gasps. She looked from me to Brian, her eyes rimmed red, a storm breaking behind them. All these years, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I blamed myself. I thought maybe I was too busy, too distracted, too weak. But it wasn't me, was it? It was you, Brian. You wanted me to cut her out. You told me a mother's love was interference. Brian's head snapped toward her, panic flaring in his eyes. Clara, don't twist this. You know how she was, always pushing, always judging. I just wanted us to have space, to be our own family. Space? Clara's voice cracked like a whip. You called it space, but it was exile. You made me exile my own mother. You made me believe I was protecting our marriage, when all I was doing was killing a part of myself. I watched silently, my hands folded, my heart both aching and oddly vindicated. For years, I had prayed she would open her eyes. Now, at last, she was staring straight at the truth, raw and merciless. Brian ran a hand through his thinning hair, frustration radiating from every twitch. This isn't helping us now. What's done is done. We're here because we need her help, financial help. That's the point. I let out a low laugh. Bitter but steady. There it is, finally stripped of pretense. No tears, no speeches about family, just the invoice. Clara's shoulders shook as she stared at him. Do you hear yourself, Brian? We came here for money. Not forgiveness, not healing, just money. His silence was the only confirmation she needed. For the first time in 12 years, I saw my daughter's eyes clear, not clouded by excuses, not blurred by manipulation, but wide open. Clara turned back to me, her voice breaking but resolute. Mom, if I walk away from him, will you still walk away from me? The question landed heavier than any storm wave that had ever slammed against my seaside windows. Clara's eyes were wide, searching, desperate, not for money, but for something far rarer, absolution. I leaned forward, steepling my fingers. Clara, don't confuse the issue. This isn't about me choosing between you and Brian. This is about you finally choosing yourself. Her lips trembled. I thought I was choosing my family. You chose fear, I said softly, but without mercy. Fear of rocking your marriage. Fear of standing up to him. And fear, Clara, is no foundation for family, it's quicksand. Brian's face flushed crimson. He shot up from the couch, pacing like a caged animal. This is ridiculous. We didn't come here for therapy. Margaret, you can stand on your soapbox all day. But the truth is simple, we're broke. You're rich, and family helps family. That's the deal. I tilted my head, studying him as though he were some curious insect. Funny thing about deals, Brian, they require both parties to benefit. And tell me, what exactly do I gain by resurrecting the same people who buried me for 12 years? He froze, the words catching in his throat. Clara's tears spilled over, but she didn't look at him anymore. She looked at me, like a woman crawling out of rubble, reaching for sunlight. Mom, I can't erase what I did. I can't give you back the years. But if there's any way forward, please tell me what it is. Tell me how to fix even a piece of this. Her voice broke, but it carried a rawness that almost pierced through the armor I had built brick by brick. Almost. I folded my arms, letting the silence stretch until even the gulls outside seemed to hush. Fixing begins with truth, Clara, and truth demands consequences. Are you ready to live with both? Clara wiped her eyes, inhaled shakily, and whispered, yes, whatever it takes. But from the corner of my eye, I saw Brian's fists ball, his face twisting, proof that the battle inside this house was far from over. Brian's voice erupted before Clara could steady herself. Don't you dare make promises you can't keep. Clara, whatever she's demanding, it'll never be enough. She'll bleed us dry just to punish me. I raised an eyebrow. Bleed you dry? That's a curious phrase coming from the man who's already drained my daughter of her backbone. Her laughter, and 12 years of her mother's love. Clara flinched, but she didn't look away from me. For the first time, her eyes didn't dart to Brian for approval, for permission. They stayed locked on mine. And in that gaze I saw a flicker of the little girl who once believed I could fix anything with a hug and a slice of pie. Mom, she said, voice trembling but determined, I'm ready to face the consequences. Just tell me what to do. Brian barked a bitter laugh. Consequences? Don't be naive. She doesn't want reconciliation, Clara. She wants revenge. Can't you see that? I leaned back, folding my arms. Revenge? Brian, if I wanted revenge, I would have let this conversation end the moment you mentioned foreclosure. Revenge is slamming doors. What I want is respect. And that begins with accountability. Clara pressed a hand to her chest, as if bracing against a weight that had finally revealed itself. Then I'll be accountable, she whispered. I'll say it plain, I abandoned you. I chose him over you. And I regret it every single day. Her words quivered in the air, fragile but real. Brian snarled, oh, please, regret doesn't pay bills. We're wasting time here. Correction, I said, my voice steady as the tide. You're wasting time. Clara is finally learning the language of truth. You, Brian, are still choking on your lies. His fists unclenched and clenched again. His whole body coiled like a man cornered. I could see the calculation flicker in his eyes, whether to storm out or dig deeper. And then, with a suddenness that chilled the room, Brian leaned forward, his voice low and venomous, if you don't help us, Margaret, I'll make sure this town sees you for what you really are, a selfish old woman who abandoned her own blood. I didn't flinch. His words cracked through the air like a whip. But I'd grown immune to whips a long time ago. I sipped the last of my coffee, set the cup down with deliberate calm, and met his glare head on. "Brian," I said, my tone silk wrapped around steel. "The town already knows who I am. They saw me selling pies under the July sun. They saw me carry bags heavier than my own heart. They saw me smile through winters when my phone never rang. Do you know what they never saw? A single kind word from you." Clara's hand flew to her mouth. She stared at her husband as though he'd suddenly grown fangs. "Brian, how could you?" But he doubled down, leaning toward me, voice rising. "Money changes people. You think you're better than us now because you lucked into an inheritance? You're just an old woman with a bigger house to die in." I stood slowly, letting my shadow fall across him. "Better than you? No. Stronger than you? Absolutely. Because strength isn't in the size of a bank account. It's in surviving the years you tried to erase me. It's in knowing I can live without you. But you can't live without my help." Clara's sobs turned sharp, furious. "Enough. Brian, don't you see? You haven't just bankrupted us financially, you've bankrupted our family, too." He turned to her, eyes blazing. "And what, Clara? You'd rather throw yourself at her mercy? After everything? She'll never forgive us. She just wants us crawling." Clara straightened, and for the first time in years, I saw a spark of defiance ignite in her. "Maybe crawling is exactly what we deserve." Brian froze, the words hitting him harder than anything I could have said. The silence that followed was electric, because in that instant, I realized Clara wasn't just speaking to him. She was finally speaking for herself. And Brian, he looked like a man who had just lost his grip on the very strings he'd been pulling for years. Brian's jaw tightened, his face reddening like a man choking on his own pride. He opened his mouth, ready to lash back, but Clara beat him to it. "No, Brian," she said, her voice steadier than I'd ever heard it. "I've spent 12 years echoing your words, silencing my own, and cutting off the one person who never stopped loving me. I'm done." Her declaration stunned him. His mouth hung open, his fists trembling at his sides. But no sound came out. I folded my arms. "Do you hear that, Brian? That's the sound of freedom. Not mine, hers." Clara turned to me, her eyes wet but blazing. "Mom, I can't undo the past. But if you'll let me, I want to try to rebuild something real between us. Not for money, not for appearances, just for us." Her words reached me like a tide washing over a scarred shoreline, soothing. But not enough to erase the rocks beneath. Brian sneered, regaining just enough venom to spit. "And what, Margaret? You're going to welcome her back with open arms? After everything? She abandoned you. I made her do it. But she chose it." Clara's head snapped toward him, fury radiating from her. "Yes, Brian, I chose it, and now I choose differently. I choose my mother. I choose the truth. And if that means losing you," her voice wavered. But her eyes didn't. "Then maybe I've already lost nothing worth keeping." The words landed like a slap. Brian staggered back a step, stunned, as though the ground he'd claimed for 12 years had just crumbled beneath his feet. I felt a pang, part sorrow, part triumph. My daughter was finally speaking her own language, not his. But the question lingered in the air, sharp as the salt wind outside. Was it too late? Brian's eyes darkened, his voice dropping into a dangerous calm. "Careful, Clara. If you walk away from me now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." The threat slithered into the room, low and venomous. Brian's voice was calm, but his eyes gleamed with the desperation of a man watching his empire of control collapse. Clara inhaled sharply, but this time she didn't recoil. She squared her shoulders, her hands trembling yet clenched into fists. "No, Brian, the only thing I regret is letting you dictate my life for 12 years. I regret silencing my mother's voice so yours could echo louder. But I won't regret walking away from poison." The air in the room shifted, heavy with something I hadn't felt in over a decade, Clara's strength. I tilted my head, studying Brian as if he were a specimen under glass. "You know what regret looks like, Brian? It looks like 12 Christmases where a grandmother sat alone, waiting for a call that never came. It looks like toys gathering dust in boxes, never reaching the hands they were bought for. It looks like a mother being erased because her love was inconvenient to you." Brian's jaw clenched, his facade cracking. You think you're blameless? You think you were the perfect mother? I smiled, but it was sharp as broken glass. No parent is perfect, but abandoning your own mother for 12 years? That's not imperfection, Brian. That's cruelty, and it has your fingerprints all over it. Clara turned toward me, tears streaking her face, but her voice came out clear. Mom, I can't undo what I allowed him to take from us. But if you'll let me, I want to start again, even if it takes the rest of my life. My chest ached at her plea, but years of silence weighed heavier than her words. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked at Brian, whose mask was slipping faster by the second. His lips twisted into a cruel smile. Start again? Don't fool yourself, Clara. Without me, you're nothing. And Margaret, he turned, his voice dripping with scorn, without me, she never would have abandoned you. Brian's words dripped like acid, meant to corrode what little ground Clara had just gained. But instead of shrinking, she straightened, her shoulders trembling but squared. You're right, she said, her voice raw but steady. Without you, I never would have abandoned her. Which means you're not my anchor. Brian, you're my chain. His smug smile faltered, just a flicker, but I caught it. The crack in his armor widened. I rose from my chair, each step deliberate, my heels clicking softly against the Italian marble. Brian, men like you survive on silence. On daughters too afraid to defy you. On mothers too broken to fight back. But here's the truth, silence is dead. And so is your hold over this family. He turned to me, anger twisting his face. You think you can just cut me out? Clarice, my wife, those kids are mine. You can't erase me. Clarice's voice cut through his rant like a blade. Watch me. Her hands shook, but the words stood tall. For the first time, my daughter looked more like that fearless little girl in the photograph than the shadow of a woman he had molded. Brian's face hardened, but his eyes darted toward the door, the look of a man who realized the tide had shifted against him. He jabbed a finger at Clara. You'll come crawling back, you and your mother both. And when you do, don't expect me to be waiting. Good, Clara whispered, because I won't want you there. The room was silent but for the crash of waves outside, each one a reminder that even the strongest storms eventually break against rock. I turned my gaze on Brian, sharp and unflinching. This house, this peace, this freedom, none of it has a place for you. Leave now, before the ocean teaches you what drowning feels like. Brian's eyes flickered with rage, but beneath it, fear. And as he moved toward the door, I realized this wasn't just the end of his visit. It might be the beginning of Clara's liberation. Brian's footsteps pounded across the marble like a drumbeat of retreat. But his pride wouldn't let him go quietly. He stopped at the threshold, his hand gripping the doorframe, shoulders heaving. You'll regret this, he spat, voice sharp enough to cut glass. Both of you, the world's going to know what kind of mother you really are. Margaret, a bitter old woman who values her ego over her family. I let the words hang, unflinching, then answered with a calm so steady it made his anger look childish. The world already knows what kind of mother I am. And after today, they'll know what kind of husband you've been. Clara shifted beside me, tears still streaking her cheeks. But there was fire in her eyes now. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. Brian, you don't scare me anymore. Not with your threats, not with your silence, not with your control. You've taken enough from me. You won't take another day. His face contorted, a mask of fury and disbelief. For 12 years he'd sculpted her silence. And in a single afternoon, it crumbled. He slammed the door so hard the walls quivered, leaving the echo of his rage behind. Silence settled, not the suffocating kind I'd endured for over a decade, but a silence with weight and possibility. The crash of waves outside filled the room like applause. Clara turned to me, her chest rising and falling as though she'd just run a marathon. Mom, he's gone, for now, but I don't know what happens next. I studied her face, the woman weathered by regret, the child buried beneath guilt, and the ember of someone trying to rise from ashes. You start by choosing, I said gently, every day, one choice at a time. Choose truth over lies, strength over silence, and love, the real kind, not the kind with conditions. Clara's lips trembled, but she nodded slowly, like someone tasting freedom for the first time. But even as I spoke, A question twisted inside me. Could I truly let her back into my life after 12 years of abandonment, or would opening that door be my greatest risk of all? Clara sank onto the sofa. Her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. She looked smaller somehow, stripped of Brian's shadow, fragile yet oddly luminous in her honesty. "Mom," she whispered, "I don't deserve another chance. I know that, but I don't want to lose you forever. Not anymore. If I have to prove myself every single day, I will." Her voice cracked, but there was a determination in it that hadn't been there when she first walked through my door. I studied her carefully, the urge to rush to her, to cradle her head like I had when she was 5 and frightened of thunderstorms. Tugged at me, but scars don't vanish just because the storm has passed. They linger, reminding you what lightning feels like. "You say you'll prove yourself," I said, leaning forward, "but proof doesn't come in speeches. Clara, proof is in showing up. Day after day, when no one is watching. Proof is calling because you want to, not because you're desperate. Proof is your children knowing me as more than a stranger in old photographs." Her tears spilled freely now, but she didn't look away. "Then let me start. Please, let me bring them to you. Let me undo at least that part of the damage." The thought of my grandchildren, faces I had only glimpsed in grainy online photos, tightened my chest until breathing hurt. For years I'd imagined their voices, their laughter, the way they might have clung to me the way Clara once had. And now, after 12 barren years, she was offering me that chance. But trust, once shattered, doesn't rebuild in a day. "You're asking me to open a door I locked for a reason," I said quietly. "If I let you back in, there's no halfway. Either you mean it, or you walk out of my life forever." Clara wiped her face with shaking hands. "Then I mean it, forever." I searched her eyes for even a flicker of Brian's influence, and for the first time in 12 years, I saw only Clara, but the real test wasn't her words, it would come with what she did next. Clara leaned forward, her fingers twisting together like vines reaching for sunlight. "Mom, if you let me bring the children here, they'll finally know who you are. They'll see the grandmother they should have had all along. I want them to love you the way I should have." Her words pierced me, half bomb, half blade. I pictured their faces, the ones I had memorized from blurry social media posts saved under fake names. Birthdays, school recitals, soccer games, moments that had unfolded without me. Could I really step into their lives now, after being erased for so long? I took a long breath, steadying the ache in my chest. "Clara, children don't need speeches. They don't care about excuses. They know love when they feel it. If you're serious, truly serious, about rebuilding this bridge, you start by bringing them into my life without lies. No games, no conditions. Do you understand?" She nodded quickly, desperately. "Yes, Mom, I understand. I'll do it. I'll bring them here, and I'll tell them the truth." I narrowed my gaze. "The truth, Clara, not the polished story Brian always fed you. They deserve to know who their grandmother is, not the villain he painted." For the first time, her lips curved into a fragile, trembling smile. "I promise." I sat back, my pulse pounding. For years, I'd imagined this moment, my grandchildren running across a lawn, their laughter spilling into the house like sunlight. Yet the dream came tangled with dread. Trusting Clara again was a risk. Letting those children into my heart was a bigger one. Because what if she vanished again? What if I tasted love only to have it ripped away a second time? Clara reached for my hand, her eyes wide with both hope and terror. "Please, Mom, let me prove to you that I won't disappear again." And for the first time in years, I had to decide whether to let her touch me or to pull away. Her hand hovered inches from mine, trembling like a leaf in the wind. My instinct, the old, buried one, screamed to close the distance, to clasp her fingers and pretend the last 12 years had been a nightmare I could wake from. But instinct has a cruel memory, and mine remembered birthdays spent alone, pies baked for no one, and the sting of silence that never answered back. I let the pause stretch, long enough for her to feel the weight of it. Finally, I placed my hand gently atop hers. Her breath caught, a sharp inhale of surprise and relief. "This doesn't erase the past," I warned softly, "but it might be the first stone in a new foundation. You'll need to lay the rest, brick by brick, until it holds." Tears spilled anew down Clara's cheeks. But this time her sob carried something different, hope. I'll build it, Mom. I swear I will. I searched her face, looking for cracks of insincerity, for shadows of Brian's manipulation. But all I saw was a woman stripped bare, raw with regret and desperation, clinging to the chance of redemption. The crash of waves outside punctuated the silence, steady and relentless, like time itself daring me to take this leap. Then bring them, I said at last, my voice low but firm. Bring my grandchildren here. Let them meet me, not as the ghost Brian made me, but as their grandmother. Clara's lips trembled into a smile, fragile but radiant. I will. I'll bring them tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word flared in my chest like fire and ice all at once. But even as Clara clung to my hand, I couldn't shake the question burning inside me. Would tomorrow bring healing at last, or just reopen wounds I'd barely managed to close? The word tomorrow echoed in my mind like a church bell, heavy, promising, and dangerous all at once. Tomorrow meant hope, but hope was a blade. It could carve a new path, or cut me deeper than ever before. Clara squeezed my hand, her grip warm but unsteady. They'll love you, Mom. I know they will. They've asked about you so many times, and I always lied. I told them you lived too far away, or that you were too busy. I pulled my hand free, not in cruelty, but because truth required distance. Children forgive lies easier than mothers do, but don't mistake their curiosity for automatic love. They don't know me, Clara. You made sure of that. Her face crumpled, and she nodded. You're right. I stole those years from all of us, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. Her vow stirred something in me, fragile as sea glass washed smooth over time. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted it more than I'd ever admit. But belief without proof was what had broken me before. I stood and walked to the tall windows, the ocean sprawling endless and merciless beyond the glass. Bring them, but hear me clearly. If you vanish again, if you disappear once more after reopening this wound, I won't survive it. Not again. This is your only chance. Behind me, Clara let out a sob that shook the air. Then I won't waste it. I didn't turn around. I watched the gulls wheel over the waves, white wings flashing against the sky. Freedom was theirs by nature. For me, it would always be a choice. And as the gulls cried above the restless sea, I wondered, would Clara truly soar free of Brian's chains, or was I setting myself up to watch her fall again? The house felt unbearably still after Brian's storming exit. Clara remained on the sofa, her shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the marble floor as though afraid it would swallow her whole. I don't even know where to begin, she whispered. I've lied to the kids. I've lied to myself, and worst of all, I lied about you. They think you were the one who kept away. Her words cut deep, sharper than any of Brian's barbs. Me? The villain in their story? For 12 years, I had been the ghost, the absent grandmother, but in their eyes, I was the deserter. I turned slowly, my voice low and deliberate. So that's the legacy Brian gave me, the cruel grandmother who never bothered to show up. Do you understand how that poisons a child, Clara? How it steals not just my place in their lives, but their chance to know real love? She pressed her palms to her face, sobbing. I know. I let him paint you into a monster so he could keep his grip on me. And I let him. God help me. I let him. For a moment, anger flared in me, hot and merciless. But then I saw her, a woman unraveling, choking on 12 years of silence, and my fury shifted into something heavier, sorrow. You can't rewrite the past, I said, my tone softening, but you can tell the truth now. Every ugly detail. The children deserve that, and so do I. Clara lifted her head, her cheeks streaked red, her voice shaking but firm. Then I'll tell them everything, about Brian, about me, about how we cut you out. They'll know it wasn't you who abandoned them, it was us. The words hung in the air, raw and trembling. Outside, the ocean crashed against the rocks, as if applauding the courage she should have found years ago. But promises are easy in the shadow of shame. What mattered was whether Clara would still have the strength to speak this truth in the light of tomorrow. Clara's vow lingered in the air like incense, sweet, but fragile, ready to vanish at the faintest draft of doubt. I studied her face, streaked with tears and regret. searching for that flicker of steel she'd need if she truly meant to follow through. Words, I said quietly, are easy to give. You've given me plenty before, promises of next time, promises of soon. Do you know how many nights I held onto those empty syllables? They nearly killed me. Clara, I don't have room for empty anymore. She swallowed hard, nodding. Then let me prove it. Tomorrow, I'll bring the children here. I'll tell them the truth, no matter how much it hurts me. I arched a brow. And what about Brian? Do you think he'll sit quietly while you unravel the story he's been spinning for over a decade? Her lips trembled, but this time her voice didn't falter. Then he can rage all he wants. He's already lost his grip on me. I won't let him poison them the way he poisoned me. Her declaration struck something deep in my chest, equal parts pride and pain. For years, I had prayed she would find her spine again. And now, at last, it gleamed faintly through her cracks. But could it hold under the weight of Brian's fury? I walked to the window, staring at the restless sea. Clara, understand this. The truth will break things. Maybe your marriage, maybe your children's trust in both of you. But lies have already broken enough. If you want redemption, you have to be willing to live with what shatters. Behind me, I heard her inhale sharply. Then let it shatter. I'd rather face the ruins than keep living in a lie. The waves crashed harder, as though the ocean itself approved. Yet even as her words filled the room, a cold question gnawed at me. Would Clara's courage survive Brian's wrath when tomorrow's truth cut through the last of his control? The night stretched long after Clara left. I sat alone in the living room, the sea humming against the windows like a lullaby with sharp edges. My glass of wine went warm in my hand as memories pressed in, birthdays spent in silence. Pies baked for no one. The echo of a daughter's voice I thought I'd never hear again. Tomorrow, that word had weight now. Heavier than inheritance, heavier than grief. Tomorrow meant children's faces, unknown yet mine by blood. Tomorrow meant truth clawing its way out of the dark. I set the glass down and reached for the small wooden box on the bookshelf. Inside were the toys I'd bought over the years, a teddy bear with a crooked smile. A box of crayons still wrapped in plastic. A doll with blonde curls. Tokens of love I'd hidden away, foolishly hoping someday they'd be claimed. My fingers traced the dust on the doll's dress. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to whisper, maybe tomorrow. But shadows whispered back, what if Clara falters? What if Brian drags her back into his orbit before she gets here? What if the children arrive poisoned? Already convinced I'm the villain in their story? The fear was sharp, but underneath it pulsed something fiercer, resolve. I had survived 12 years of exile. I had built a new life from ashes. I could not, would not, let tomorrow destroy me, no matter how it unfolded. I placed the toys back in their box and closed the lid. The choice was already made. I would open the door tomorrow. But I would keep my dignity bolted tight. As the clock struck midnight and the tide roared outside, I knew tomorrow would either heal a wound, or carve it deeper than ever. And I had no idea which one was coming. Morning broke with a thin veil of mist rolling off the Atlantic, softening the horizon until sea and sky bled into one pale canvas. I brewed my coffee, the rich aroma filling my beach house, and tried to pretend it was just another day. But my pulse betrayed me, steady drumming in my throat. A reminder that today would not be ordinary. I walked through the house, smoothing cushions that didn't need smoothing, straightening books already lined in order. Anxiety has a way of demanding chores, as if a polished surface could shield you from what lurks beneath. My gaze kept sliding toward the driveway, half expecting their car to appear too soon or never at all. When the knock finally came, my hand hesitated on the doorknob. For 12 years I had dreamed of this sound, the chance to open the door not to ghosts of betrayal, but to new faces that carried my blood. And yet, fear coiled inside me, fear that they would not see me as Grandma, but as the stranger Brian had painted me to be. I opened the door slowly. Clara stood there, pale but resolute, her hand resting lightly on the shoulder of a tall boy with Claris eyes. Beside him a younger girl clutching a stuffed rabbit, and in front of them a little one whose curls bounced with every nervous shift. My grandchildren, flesh and bone, not grainy images stolen from social media. Clara's voice cracked as she spoke. Kids, this is your grandmother, Margaret. The eldest, perhaps 12, studied me with cautious curiosity, his chin tilting as though weighing the truth of my existence. The girl, no more than 8, stepped closer, her rabbit's ear dragging against the porch. You're real? She whispered. Something inside me fractured and healed at once. I knelt to meet her eyes. Very real, sweetheart. My voice trembled, but I forced a smile. And I've been waiting for you a very long time. The youngest barreled forward without hesitation, arms wrapping tight around my neck. His warmth flooded me, a tide surging past walls I thought I'd fortified forever. Behind him, Clara's eyes shone with tears, and even the eldest's guarded expression softened into something I dared to call hope. Inside, the house seemed brighter with their footsteps echoing against marble and glass. Their chatter filled corners once heavy with silence. I guided them to the kitchen where pies cooled on the counter, apple, chocolate, and pecan. A grandmother's house, I said, cutting generous slices, should always smell like sugar. The children laughed, and for a moment the years of loneliness dissolved like butter in heat. Yet in the back of my mind, shadows whispered, Brian's sneer, his threats, his certainty that I would regret opening this door. I watched Clara carefully as she helped pour juice into glasses. Her hands shook, but her eyes did not waver. When our gazes met, she gave the faintest nod, as if to say, I told them the truth. Every word. I exhaled slowly, a weight easing though not gone. Maybe this was the beginning of something fragile, something worth guarding. But as laughter bubbled through my once empty kitchen, I couldn't ignore the storm cloud hovering beyond the horizon, because I knew Brian Matthews was not the kind of man to surrender quietly. The children's laughter was like sunlight slanting through storm clouds, warm and fragile, almost unbelievable. The youngest had chocolate smudged across his cheek. The girl leaned against me as if she'd known me all her life. And the eldest, though guarded, allowed the corner of his mouth to lift when I teased him about finishing his second slice of pecan pie. For a moment, I let myself breathe. This is what it should have been, I thought, 12 years late. But here, Clara sat across from me, her eyes red yet steady, watching her children devour every bite as though sugar alone could anchor the day. She cleared her throat. I told them everything, Mom, the truth, about Brian, about me, about how I chose wrong. The eldest looked up, his fork paused midair. So Dad lied? Silence settled heavy in the room. Clara's lip trembled, but she nodded. Yes, sweetheart, he lied, and I let him. But it stops now. My heart clenched, not from anger, but from the weight of watching my daughter shoulder honesty at last. I placed my hand gently over his. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Big ones. But what matters now is that you know I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. His eyes searched mine, testing for cracks. Then slowly, hesitantly, he nodded. The little girl snuggled closer into my arm. Can we come back, Grandma? Like, every week? My throat tightened, tears burning hot, but I managed a smile. If your mother keeps her promise. Then yes, every week, as often as you like. Clara's tears slipped free, silent but sure. She mouthed the words thank you, and I simply held her gaze. The peace in that moment was almost unbearable. Like a glass sculpture you're afraid to touch in case it shatters. And then, like a curse whispered into sunlight, the distant crunch of tires on gravel cut through the air. The children stilled, forks frozen. Clara's eyes widened, dread flooding her face. I didn't need to look out the window to know. Brian. The sound of his car door slamming shut echoed like thunder. And I realized the fragile bridge we'd just built was about to be tested by fire. The slam of the car door reverberated through the house. Rattling more than glass, it rattled every nerve I'd just managed to steady. The children's chatter died instantly, their eyes darting toward the front of the house like startled deer. Clara's face drained of color. He followed us, she whispered, her hands trembling against the juice glass she hadn't finished. Of course he had. Brian Matthews wasn't a man who lost quietly. He was a man who came back to reclaim, to intimidate, to remind everyone of the leash he believed he still held. Heavy footsteps approached the porch. Deliberate, each one louder than the last. The knock that followed wasn't a knock at all, it was a demand. Clara, his voice boomed through the door. sharp and furious. Open up. Bring the kids out. We're leaving, now. The children froze, their little faces pinched with fear. The girl clutched her rabbit so tightly its stitched ear bent sideways. The eldest swallowed hard, eyes flicking to his mother. Mom? Clara's lips trembled, but she didn't move, not toward the door, not toward Brian. Instead, she looked at me. I rose slowly, smoothing my hands over my skirt, letting the silence stretch before I spoke. Children, I said softly, go to the den. There's a television in there. Stay quiet until I come for you. They obeyed without argument, shuffling quickly down the hall. Clara stood frozen, torn between terror and defiance. The pounding came again, harder this time. Don't make me break this damn door. Clara, I stepped closer to my daughter, my voice steady as steel. This is your moment. You either open the door and crawl back into his chains, or you stand here with me and end this. Her chest rose and fell in quick, uneven bursts. Her eyes shone with fear. But beneath it, I saw something else, a flicker of resolve. I'm not going with him, she whispered, her voice shaking but firm. Not this time, not ever again. The knob rattled violently, Brian's fury spilling into my sanctuary, and I knew when that door swung open, the final confrontation would decide not just Clara's freedom, but whether my family could survive at all. The doorknob jerked, twisted, then finally gave way with a sharp metallic crack. The door flew open, crashing against the wall. Brian filled the frame, his presence a storm in human form, face flushed, fists clenched, eyes burning with rage. Get your things, he barked at Clara, his voice shaking the air. We're leaving. I won't say it again. But Clara didn't move. She stood beside me, her spine rigid, her hands trembling but locked at her sides. For the first time in 12 years, she didn't fold. No, Brian, she said, her voice trembling at first, then steadying with each syllable. We're not leaving. The kids are staying. I'm staying. His face twisted, confusion and fury colliding in an ugly snarl. Don't be ridiculous. You think she's your savior now? He jabbed a finger toward me. This bitter old woman will turn you against me, poison our children, destroy everything we've built. I stepped forward, calm and deliberate, until I stood between him and Clara. Brian, everything you built was already rotting. Lies don't make a family. Control doesn't make a marriage. And fear doesn't raise children, it cripples them. His jaw tightened, his chest heaving. Stay out of this. Margaret, you don't get to speak about my family. I lifted my chin, unflinching. Your family? You spent 12 years cutting me out of it. You don't get to claim it now. This is my daughter. Those are my grandchildren. And if you truly believe fear will drag them back to you, then you've already lost. Clara's voice broke in, clear and defiant. Mom's right. I won't let you twist me anymore. I won't let you twist them. For a long, terrible moment, Brian just stared, chest rising, hands twitching, rage boiling without release. Then, with a guttural growl, he turned and stormed out, the slam of the door rattling the windows. Silence returned, not heavy this time, but light, electric, full of something I hadn't felt in years, possibility. Clara sagged into the sofa, sobs of relief breaking free. I stood tall, my heart pounding but steady. For the first time, my house felt like more than a sanctuary, it felt like a fortress. Yet as Clara clung to me, whispering, "It's over," I knew better. Battles end in slammed doors. But wars, especially ones fought inside families, linger in the silence that follows. Clara buried her face in my shoulder, her tears hot against my skin. Her body trembled with the weight of 12 years collapsing at once. As if she were finally breathing without chains around her lungs. "It's really over," she whispered, as though saying it aloud might make it true. I stroked her hair slowly, the way I had when she was a child waking from nightmares. "No, sweetheart," I murmured. "It's not over. Not yet." Heel circle. Men like Brian don't surrender, they regroup. The difference now is that you're no longer standing alone. Her sobs quieted, replaced by deep, steady breaths. She pulled back, eyes rimmed red but blazing with a fragile kind of resolve. "Then I'll be ready, because I'm not going back. Not ever." I nodded, pride and sorrow knotting together in my chest. "That's the beginning. But now comes the hard part, proving to yourself." to your children, and to me, that this wasn't just a moment of courage. It has to be a lifetime of it. From the hallway, the children peeked back into the room, their small faces etched with fear and confusion. The eldest, his jaw tight, asked in a voice braver than his years, "Is Dad gone?" Clara turned toward him, her voice shaking but clear. "Yes, and he won't take us away from Grandma again. I promise you." The boy's shoulders slumped, relief flickering across his face. The little girl darted forward, rabbit in tow, and nestled into my lap. "You're safe here," I told her, kissing the crown of her head. "All of you are safe here." Clara watched me with tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time in years, I saw not the woman molded by Brian's control, but the daughter I had raised, wounded. Yes, but fighting to reclaim her place in the light. Yet even as hope filled the room, a shadow lingered at the edges of my mind. Safety was never guaranteed when the past still knew your address. That night, long after the children had curled into blankets on the guest beds and their soft breathing filled the hallways, I sat by the ocean-facing window with Clara beside me. The moonlight carved silver paths across the waves, restless and eternal, reminding me how time never truly erases, it only rolls forward. Clara's hands were folded tightly in her lap, her shoulders still taut. "He'll come back," she said, her voice hushed. "I know him. He won't let go that easily." I sipped my tea, steady, deliberate. "Yes, he'll come back, but when he does, he won't find the same woman he left behind. Not in you, not in me." Her eyes glistened, fear and determination battling in their depths. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." I turned to face her fully. "Clara, strength isn't loud. It's not fists or shouts. It's the quiet decision to keep standing, even when everything inside you screams to sit down. You found that strength today. Don't let it go." She pressed her lips together, then exhaled. The kids, they looked at me differently tonight. I think they saw the truth in my eyes for the first time. "That's what children do," I said softly. "They see more than we want them to." But this time, what they saw was their mother choosing courage over fear. That will stay with them. Clara leaned her head on my shoulder. For years, that simple weight had been missing. The closeness stolen by distance and lies. And those scars throbbed beneath the moment. I allowed myself to savor it. The waves outside thundered, a chorus of reminders that storms always return, but so does the tide. As Clara drifted into uneasy sleep beside me, I stared out at the dark horizon, knowing the hardest test was yet to come, not whether Brian would strike again, but whether Clara's newfound courage would hold when he did. The house was still, wrapped in the fragile hush of midnight. Only the ocean spoke, its rhythmic crashing a lullaby for the children down the hall. I remained awake, watching Clara sleep on the couch beside me, her face softened by exhaustion but lined with the weight of choices finally made. In her restlessness, she murmured words that broke my heart. "Don't take them, please," and I reached to cover her hand, whispering a promise she couldn't hear. "No one will take them from you again." My thoughts wandered to Brian. I knew men like him didn't vanish, they schemed, waited, sharpened their weapons in silence. He would come back with lawyers, or with anger, or both. The thought should have filled me with dread, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time, I wasn't powerless. I had this house, these walls, this life built from pain and inheritance. But more than that, I had clarity. I knew where I stood, and I knew what I would fight for. The first light of dawn began to paint the sky pale pink. I rose quietly, stepping onto the terrace. The sea breeze wrapped around me, cool and bracing, carrying the scent of salt and freedom. Behind me, Clara stirred, and soon the children would wake, blinking into this new chapter none of us had expected. I closed my eyes, letting the wind brush away the last shadows of fear. Whatever came next, Brian's fury, his threats, his desperate grasp for control, I was ready. And Clara, whether she realized it yet or not, would learn she was ready too. Because survival wasn't the end of our story. It was the beginning of something harder, braver, more necessary, rebuilding a family from the ruins of betrayal. And as the sun climbed higher over the horizon, I knew the final page of this chapter would demand a choice, from Clara. From me, from all of us, that would define our family's future forever. The sun rose over the horizon, spilling golden light across the sea and painting the glass walls of my home in fire. I stood at the terrace railing, the warmth on my face a reminder that even after the darkest nights, morning always comes. Behind me, I heard small footsteps padding across marble. Grandma? It was the little girl, rabbit in hand, her hair a sleepy halo. Can we have pancakes today? I bent down, scooping her into my arms. We can have pancakes every Sunday if you want, I said, pressing a kiss to her cheek. She giggled, the sound like a bell. And for a fleeting moment, life felt simple again. Clara appeared in the doorway, her eyes tired but alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. She watched her daughter nestled in my arms and whispered, "This is what I almost lost forever." I met her gaze. "Then don't lose it again. Hold on to it. Protect it." She nodded, tears glistening in the morning light. "I will, I promise." We sat at the breakfast table as the children poured syrup too generously and laughed at sticky fingers. Clara reached for my hand across the table, squeezing it gently. "Mom, thank you for not shutting the door on us yesterday. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll spend the rest of my life proving I can earn it." My throat tightened, but I forced my voice steady. Forgiveness isn't a gift I give, it's a burden I release. What matters now is not words, Clara, but what you do next. The children are watching, so am I. She nodded again, her grip firm, her eyes resolute. For the first time, I saw a woman ready to fight not for appearances, not for a failing marriage, but for her children and for herself. As the waves outside glittered beneath the rising sun, I realized something profound. My story of abandonment and survival had transformed into something greater. It was no longer just about my pain. It was about the legacy of strength I could pass on to Clara, to her children, and perhaps to anyone who had ever felt discarded by those they loved. I raised my coffee cup in a small toast, smiling through the ache in my chest. "To new beginnings," I said. The children clinked their juice glasses against mine, and Clara whispered, "To freedom." And in that moment, surrounded by laughter and hope, I finally understood. Family is not defined by who walks away, it's defined by who chooses to stay. Rebuild, and love without conditions. Real family love should never come with conditions. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting the pain, it means freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. True strength comes from setting boundaries, choosing peace over toxicity, and protecting your own dignity. And when you finally learn to love yourself first, you'll discover that freedom and peace are worth more than any apology or inheritance.